The alarm blared its usual shrill complaint at 6:30 a.m., and I swatted at it with the practiced contempt of routine. Tuesday. Another unremarkable Tuesday in Baltimore, with rain forecasted and 3 meetings scheduled back-to-back before noon. The coffee maker gurgled in the kitchen, programmed last night because I never trusted morning me to remember. Small mercies. My phone buzzed while I was brushing my teeth. Probably Karen from accounting, already on my case about those expense reports. I ignored it and continued my morning ritual: shower, dress, coffee, news. The headlines scrolled by as I sipped from my mug. Supply chain issues, political posturing, sports scores. Nothing worth the climbing blood pressure. Going to be late tonight, I texted my roommate, Ellie. Budget meeting with Reynolds. She responded immediately. Did you see what happened in DC? I frowned. No what? 3 dots pulsed, then, never mind, probably nothing. Just some kind of commotion downtown. Might affect your commute. DC was always having some protest or motorcade tying up traffic. I checked the route on my phone, clear all the way to the office. Whatever it was couldn't be that significant. The radio stayed off in my car. Silence was a luxury these days. The highway was strangely empty for a Tuesday morning, but I wasn't about to question good fortune. As I pulled into the parking garage, my phone vibrated again, this time with a distinctive tone I'd never heard before. Emergency alert. Incident reported in central Washington, D.C. Authorities responding. Avoid downtown area until further notice. I stared at the message. Vague, even for government standards. An incident could mean anything from a water main break to a terrorist attack. I pocketed my phone and headed inside, already formulating excuses for not having those reports ready. The office hummed with unusual energy. Clusters of people gathered around computer screens, voices pitched slightly higher than normal. I nodded at the receptionist, who barely acknowledged me, her eyes fixed on her monitor. What's going on? I asked, stopping by Diego's desk. He was refreshing a news site that showed helicopter footage of downtown DC, smoke rising from somewhere near the National Mall. Some kind of explosion or collapse, he said, not looking up. They're saying it might be structural, might be something else. Communications are sketchy. Terrorist attack? Diego shrugged. No one's claiming responsibility. The weird thing is how the buildings came down. Like they were pulled downward, not blown up. I leaned closer to see the footage. The Washington Monument was still standing, but something was wrong with the perspective, as if the ground around it had sunken. The camera angle changed abruptly, cutting to a reporter standing well away from the scene. Morgan, my supervisor's voice cut through my concentration. We still have a budget meeting. Whatever's happening in DC, we've still got deadlines. The morning crawled by in a haze of spreadsheets and projections, but concentration was difficult. People kept checking their phones under the table, and twice the meeting was interrupted by colleagues coming in with updates that weren't really updates at all, just more confusion about what was happening 40 miles south of us. At 11:17 a.m., every phone in the room erupted with another alert. Emergency alert. Mandatory evacuation in progress for central Washington, D.C. Surrounding areas advised to shelter in place. Monitor official channels for instructions. The meeting dissolved after that. Reynolds tried to maintain order, but it was useless. I returned to my desk and tried calling my friend Zach, who worked at a think tank near DuPont Circle. The call went straight to voicemail. Same with my cousin Mia in Arlington. The office television was tuned to a news channel showing more aerial footage. The collapse appeared more extensive now, with a strange depression centered on what used to be the National Mall. The edges of the depression were unnaturally smooth, as if something had taken a giant ice cream scoop to the earth. They're saying it's a sinkhole, said Tanya from marketing, but her voice carried a question. Since when do sinkholes have perfectly circular edges? Someone else responded. My phone buzzed with a text from Ellie. Are you coming home early? Everyone's leaving the city. I looked around. People were indeed packing up, despite it being barely noon. Reynolds says we can go if we're concerned. Diego informed me, already shouldering his bag. I'm heading to my sister's place in Pennsylvania until they figure this out. I hesitated. The practical part of me, the part that paid bills on time and kept an organized calendar, thought this was an overreaction. Yes, something serious had happened in DC, but Baltimore was fine. Leaving early meant falling behind on work. I think I'll stay a bit longer, I said. At least finish the quarterly projections. Diego gave me a strange look. You've always been stubborn, Morgan. Just keep an eye on the news, okay? The office emptied quickly after that. I relished the quiet, finally able to focus without distractions. Outside my window, traffic had intensified, everyone apparently leaving at once. Amateur hour. I'd wait until the congestion cleared. At 2:13 p.m., another alert. Emergency alert. Communications disruptions reported throughout DMV area. Cellular networks implementing emergency protocols. Limit non-essential calls. I tried reaching Ellie again, but the call wouldn't connect. Email still worked, though. I messaged my parents in Colorado. Everything's fine in Baltimore. Some situation in DC, but I'm far enough away. Don't worry if you can't reach me by phone. Networks are overloaded. By 4:30 p.m., I was one of 3 people left in the office. The projections were done, my inbox was cleared, and I'd even organized my digital files, all with the news playing in the background. The coverage had grown increasingly chaotic. Different channels reported contradictory information: a natural disaster, an attack, an infrastructure failure. One fringe station even suggested some kind of experimental weapon test gone wrong. The only consistent element was the evacuation. DC was being systematically emptied, with military checkpoints established on major routes out of the city. The footage showed thousands of cars lined up, people being processed through screening points before being allowed to continue. Something about those screenings bothered me. They weren't just checking IDs. Medical personnel in hazmat suits appeared to be examining evacuees, some of whom were separated from the main group and directed to quarantine zones. I shut down my computer and decided it was finally time to leave. The sun was already low in the sky, casting long shadows across the parking garage. My footsteps echoed unnaturally in the emptiness. As I drove home, I noticed fewer cars than there should have been, even accounting for early departures. The silence felt heavy, expectant. At a red light, I rolled down my window and realized what was bothering me: no birds. The usual urban soundtrack of pigeons and sparrows was completely absent. My apartment building was unusually quiet too. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, a precaution that felt silly but somehow necessary. The hallway lights flickered briefly as I approached my door. "Ellie?" I called out, dropping my keys on the entry table. No response. A note was magnetically attached to the refrigerator, gone to my parents. "Cell networks unreliable. Stay safe." I turned on the television for company, flipping to the news. The same footage played on a loop, but the reporting had grown more subdued. The anchors spoke in measured tones about containment efforts and ongoing assessment of the situation. Standing at the window, I looked toward the south, toward DC. The horizon should have shown the faint glow of the capital's lights against the darkening sky. Instead, there was an unusual darkness, as if a piece of the night had fallen early. And then I saw it, just for a moment. A distant movement along that darkened horizon. Something massive shifting against the twilight, like the earth itself was breathing. My phone buzzed one final time for the day. Emergency alert. Remain indoors between sunset and sunrise. Further instructions to follow. I locked the door, drew the blinds, and tried to convince myself I hadn't seen anything at all. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by sirens in the distance and the occasional rumble that might have been thunder, except there was no storm. I checked my phone repeatedly throughout the night. No texts from Ellie, no calls from friends in DC, and no new emergency alerts. The silence was almost worse than the warnings. I woke at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before my alarm. The apartment felt different, emptier without Ellie's presence. The coffee maker remained silent. I'd forgotten to set it. Small routines unraveling. The television turned on to static on every channel except one, an emergency broadcast system displaying a simple message: "Stand by for important information." I waited 5 minutes, 10, 15. Nothing changed. I switched it off. My phone had 4 missed calls from my parents and 1 text message from a number I didn't recognize. Don't trust what they're telling you about DC. I tried calling Zach again. No answer. Mia. No answer. 3 more friends with DC area codes. Nothing. The shower water ran rust-colored for nearly a minute before clearing. As I dressed, I noticed a faint, unfamiliar smell in the apartment, something earthy and metallic, like old pennies left in damp soil. Outside, the morning light revealed a changed Baltimore. Military vehicles parked at major intersections. Men and women in uniform checking IDs. Digital road signs flashing: "Stay calm. Follow instructions." Emergency protocols in effect. My car started without issue, but the radio picked up only one station, the same automated voice repeating, "This is an emergency broadcast. Please stand by for important information from federal authorities. Do not attempt to travel south of Baltimore-Washington Parkway. Containment efforts continue." The office parking garage was half empty. Inside, fewer than a dozen people had come to work. Reynolds wasn't among them. "They've closed the highways heading south," Diego said, surprising me. I'd assumed he'd be halfway to Pennsylvania by now. "Military checkpoints. They're turning people back." "What about your sister?" I asked. "Change plans. Roads north are jammed too." He lowered his voice. "Have you seen the new footage?" Before I could answer, the office TV flickered to life automatically. The emergency broadcast system had been replaced by a press conference. A stern-faced woman in a Department of Homeland Security uniform stood at a podium. At 0600 hours this morning, the president authorized emergency containment protocols for the affected area, she announced. Citizens should be advised that the situation in Washington, D.C. is the result of a previously unknown geological anomaly that has caused significant structural damage to federal buildings and surrounding areas. Diego scoffed. Geological anomaly? Yesterday they were calling it a potential attack. The official continued. There is no evidence of terrorist activity or foreign involvement. I repeat, this is a natural disaster response operation. Citizens are advised to remain calm and follow instructions from authorities. The National Guard has been deployed to assist with evacuation and security. My phone vibrated with another emergency alert. Emergency alert. Mandatory health screenings for all individuals who have traveled to or from Washington, D.C. in the past 72 hours. Report to nearest medical checkpoint. That's new, I murmured. Why health screenings for a geological anomaly? Diego nodded toward Tanya from marketing, who sat alone at her desk, staring blankly at her computer. She went to D.C. on Sunday for her brother's birthday. Came back yesterday morning before everything happened. She's been acting weird since she got here. I studied Tanya from across the room. She was perfectly still, too still, her posture rigid and unnatural. As if sensing my gaze, she slowly turned her head, not her entire body, just her head, and stared directly at me. Her eyes seemed darker than I remembered. The pupils expanded until almost no iris remained. I quickly looked away. Maybe she's in shock, I suggested, not believing my own words. My computer booted up to an internal company message. Due to ongoing emergency conditions, Meridian Analytics will be closed until further notice. Critical personnel will be contacted directly. Monitor official channels for updates. Guess we came in for nothing, Diego said, already packing up. I hesitated. I'm going to try to reach some people first. While Diego left, I tried every contact I had in the DC area, calling, texting, emailing. Nothing got through. I was about to give up when my desk phone rang. The old landline, which nobody ever used. Morgan Parker, I answered. Morgan? It's Zach. His voice sounded distant, distorted. Listen carefully. I don't have much time. Zach, what's happening? Are you okay? I got out early, before they set up the perimeter. Whatever they're saying, it's not a sinkhole or geological event. His voice dropped to a whisper. Something was down there, under the city. They found it during subway tunnel excavations weeks ago and tried to keep it contained, but the line crackled with static. Zach, you're breaking up, not responding to conventional weapons. The military is more static. Changing people, Morgan. Something in the air or water. Don't let them tell you it's. The call cut off. I stared at the phone, then slowly replaced it in its cradle. When I looked up, Tanya was standing directly in front of my desk. Who was that? She asked, her voice flat. I flinched. Jesus, Tanya. You scared me. Who are you talking to? She repeated, her expression unchanged. Just a friend, I said, standing and gathering my things. I should get going since the office is closed. Tanya didn't move from my path. Has your friend been to Washington recently? Something cold settled in my stomach. No, Elite. Look, I need to get home. She studied me for a long moment, then stepped aside with mechanical precision. As I hurried past, I noticed dark veins standing out against the pale skin of her neck, pulsing with an irregular rhythm. Outside, more military vehicles had appeared. A helicopter circled overhead, its searchlight sweeping across the streets despite the morning sun. I drove home quickly, passing through 2 checkpoints where soldiers compared my ID to something on their tablets before waving me through. The apartment felt like a sanctuary, though I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I double-locked the door and pulled the blinds closed before turning on the television again. The news had resumed, but something was off about the reporting. Different channels featured anchors using identical phrasing, containment efforts proceeding as planned. Citizens advised to remain calm. Situation stabilizing. Like reading from the same script, their expressions eerily similar, blank eyes, tight smiles. One station briefly showed different footage. A reporter on the ground near the Maryland border, military vehicles behind him. "We're seeing unusual activity at the containment perimeter," he was saying. "What appears to be specialized equipment being brought in, possibly for environmental sampling or..." The feed cut abruptly, replaced by the anchor. "We apologize for the technical difficulties. As we were reporting, containment efforts are proceeding as planned." My phone rang, the unknown number from earlier. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Morgan Parker?" A male voice, unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what's happening. Check your email in 2 minutes. Delete it after reading." The call ended. True to his word, an email arrived 2 minutes later from an encrypted address. It contained only a link. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The page loaded a series of classified documents, internal military communications about subterranean anomaly DC-7 and biological contamination protocols. Photos showed the depression in DC from angles not broadcast on television. The edges weren't just smooth, they were perfectly geometrical, with strange markings like enormous claw marks scoring the ground. The final image made my blood run cold. A night vision shot from a helicopter, showing something massive moving within the depression. A writhing mass of what looked like tentacles or roots spreading outward from the center, some already extending beyond the perimeter into the surrounding neighborhoods. As I stared at the image, another emergency alert blared from my phone. Emergency alert. Mandatory curfew in effect from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Unauthorized persons outside during restricted hours will be detained. The sun was already beginning its afternoon descent. 6 hours until curfew. I looked at the frozen image on my screen once more before deleting the email and clearing my browser history. Outside my window, in the direction of DC, dark clouds had gathered, except they weren't moving like normal weather patterns. They hung suspended, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. And in the silence of my empty apartment, I could swear I heard something vast and distant, a sound like the earth groaning in its sleep. The decision to leave felt inevitable by sunset. I packed methodically, clothes, non-perishable food, water bottles, first aid kit, laptop, chargers, and the handgun my father had insisted I keep just in case. This apparently was the case. News reports had deteriorated throughout the afternoon. Stations dropped off air one by one, replaced by the emergency broadcast system with increasingly draconian instructions. Remain in your homes. Do not attempt to travel south of the containment zone. Report unusual behavior to authorities immediately. Conserve water and electricity. The last functioning news channel showed footage of military convoys heading toward DC, interspersed with press conferences where officials used more words to say less. The evacuation had been temporarily suspended due to logistical challenges. The situation remained contained but dynamic. Civilians should comply with all directives for their own safety. At 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before curfew, my phone lit up with another alert. Emergency alert. Shelter-in-place order now in effect for all Baltimore residents. Remain indoors until further notice. Compliance is mandatory. The timing felt deliberate, too late for anyone to evacuate, ensuring we'd all be trapped in place. I peered through the blinds at the street below. Military vehicles had established a checkpoint at the intersection. Soldiers in unfamiliar protective gear, not standard military uniforms, but something bulkier with full face shields, were setting up equipment. One device looked like a scanner mounted on a tripod, sweeping back and forth across the street. My phone rang. Unknown number again. "Are you still in your apartment?" The same male voice from earlier. "Who is this?" I demanded. "There's no time. They're about to implement phase 2. Are you still at home?" I hesitated only briefly. "Yes. Do you have a way out that avoids the main street?" "The fire escape leads to an alley." "Good. Take only what you can carry easily. Go now. Head north. Avoid checkpoints. They're not just enforcing curfew, they're screening for contamination. And Morgan, don't let them take blood samples or scan you, no matter what they say." The call ended. I stood frozen for a moment, weighing my options. The logical part of me, the part that paid taxes on time and kept an alphabetized spice rack, said this was madness. Fleeing my home based on cryptic warnings from an anonymous caller? Evading authorities during a national emergency? But the same logical part couldn't explain Tanya's transformation, or the contradictory reports, or the classified images of something impossibly large moving beneath the Capitol. A sharp knock at my door decided for me. Attention residents, this is the National Guard. We're conducting mandatory health screenings. Please open your door. I peered through the peephole. 2 figures in protective gear stood outside, one holding a tablet, the other a device resembling a medical scanner. "One moment," I called, trying to sound casual while silently gathering my backpack and keys. "Please open immediately, or we'll be forced to enter." Something about their voices, a flatness, an artificial quality, sent chills down my spine. I moved quietly to the bedroom, easing the window open. The fire escape creaked slightly as I stepped onto it. Final warning, open your door now. I closed the window behind me just as the sound of splintering would echoed from the front door. Descending the metal stairs as quietly as possible, I heard heavy footsteps moving through my apartment. The alley was dark, illuminated only by distant streetlights. I kept close to the buildings, moving from shadow to shadow. At the alley's end, I peered around the corner. The main street was blocked by a military checkpoint, but the side street appeared clear. I made it 3 blocks north before headlights swept around a corner ahead. I ducked into a recessed doorway, pressing myself against the wall as a military truck rumbled past. Its back was open, revealing rows of people seated inside, their postures unnaturally rigid, eyes forward. Not prisoners, they wore no restraints, but not willing passengers either. Something about their vacant expressions reminded me of Tanya. Once the truck passed, I continued north, avoiding main streets. The city felt wrong, too quiet in some areas, with unusual sounds in others. Twice I heard what sounded like muffled screams cut short. Once, a chorus of whispers emanating from a dark park. Near the city limits, I encountered another checkpoint, larger, more heavily guarded. Soldiers directed bright lights across the area, making approach impossible without being seen. I crouched behind a parked car, considering my options. A hand touched my shoulder, and I nearly screamed. "Easy," whispered a woman's voice. "You looking to get past the checkpoint?" I turned to see a middle-aged woman in dark clothing, her face partially concealed by a scarf. "Who are you?" I whispered back. "Someone who knows what's coming. There's a way around a drainage tunnel. Leads past their perimeter. Few of us are gathering there." I studied her face, searching for signs of the strange blankness I'd seen in Tanya. Her eyes seemed normal, tired, frightened, but present. "Why help me?" I asked. "Strength in numbers," she replied simply. "And fewer people transformed." The word struck me. Transformed? What does that mean? She glanced nervously at the checkpoint. "Not here. Follow if you want to live through this. Stay if you want to become something else." I followed her through a series of increasingly narrow streets to what appeared to be an abandoned construction site. A chain-link fence surrounded it, but a section had been cut away. Beyond it, concrete steps led down to a large drainage pipe, its entrance partially concealed by overgrowth. 4 other people waited there, 2 men and 2 women, all with the same hunted look. "I'm Diane," my guide said as we descended. "That's Marcus, Talib, Jenny, and Paolo." Marcus, a gaunt man with thinning hair, handed me a filtered mask. "Wear this. We don't know exactly how it spreads, but it's not taking chances." "How it spreads?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The change," Talib said, his voice hardly above a whisper. "Started in DC, but it's moving outward. People who were there when it happened, they're carriers now." "The government knows," Jenny added, a bitter edge to her voice. "They're not containing it, they're selecting who gets exposed." The tunnel stretched ahead, dimly lit by their flashlights. Water trickled along its bottom, no more than ankle deep. The walls were covered in graffiti, some of it fresh, warnings, prayers, and strange symbols I didn't recognize. "It's about a mile to the other side," Diane explained. "We wait for full dark, then we keep moving north." Paolo, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. "Show her." Diane hesitated, then pulled out her phone and loaded a video. This was taken 6 hours ago, inside the containment zone. The footage was shaky, clearly filmed by someone running. It showed a suburban street at dusk. What first appeared to be massive tree roots snaked across lawns and driveways but they moved with deliberate purpose, coiling and uncoiling. The camera panned upward, capturing something rising above the rooftops in the distance, a towering mass of writhing appendages silhouetted against the darkening sky. "Holy shit," I breathed. "Whatever was under DC," Diane said, taking back her phone. "It's not staying there. And the people who've been exposed, they're becoming extensions of it, like a hive mind, working together to help it spread." My phone vibrated unexpectedly, the screen illuminating the dark tunnel. Another emergency alert. Emergency alert. Contamination detected in water supply. Do not consume tap water. Distribution centers will be established. Report any unauthorized movement to authorities. Marcus laughed bitterly. Right on schedule. First they trap you in your homes, then they control your water supply. Next they'll offer safe water in exchange for medical screening. How do you know all this? I asked. Some of us have been tracking pattern recognition, Talib explained. Similar events, smaller scale, in other places over the past year. Always covered up as industrial accidents or natural disasters. Always followed by quarantines and contamination protocols. But DC, this is different. Bigger. Like whatever they were containing finally broke free. A distant rumble vibrated through the tunnel, strong enough to dislodge dust from the ceiling. We should move, Paolo urged. That's the third tremor in an hour. They're getting stronger. As we gathered our things, I realized with creeping horror that the water level in the tunnel had risen, now mid-calf instead of ankle deep. And it wasn't clear anymore, but cloudy with something dark and particulate. The water, I said, pointing my flashlight down. It's changed. Diane's face paled as her light joined mine, revealing tiny filaments moving independently through the murky water, like microscopic tentacles searching for something. Run, she whispered. Now. We ran through rising water, our flashlight beams dancing wildly across the tunnel walls. The liquid grew thicker with each step, clinging to our legs like hungry mouths. Paolo fell once, submerging briefly, and when he surfaced, he was spitting and clawing at his face. It got in my mouth, he gasped. Jesus Christ, I can taste it. Keep moving, Marcus ordered, gripping Paolo's arm and dragging him forward. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, though Diane had said it was only a mile. Time distorted in the darkness, marked only by Paolo's increasingly labored breathing behind me. When the exit finally appeared, a circle of night sky ahead, it felt like hours had passed. We emerged into a wooded area north of the city, collapsing on dry ground. Paolo immediately doubled over, vomiting dark fluid that writhed against the earth before going still. We need to get him help, Jenny said, her voice trembling. Talib shook his head. You saw what happened to the others. There's no help for this. Paolo looked up, his eyes already changing, the whites darkening to obsidian. I can hear them, he whispered. So many voices, they're beautiful. His skin rippled as if something moved beneath it, dark veins spreading visibly across his face. We backed away instinctively. We can't stay here, Diane said. If he's turning, others will come. We can't just leave him, I protested. Watch me, Marcus muttered, already gathering his backpack. Paolo's body contorted suddenly, his spine arching at an impossible angle. A sound escaped him, not a scream, but a high, trilling note that raised the hair on my arms. In the distance, something answered with an identical call. They're communicating, Talib whispered in horror. Jenny pulled a hunting knife from her boot. I'm sorry, Paolo, she said, advancing toward him. I turned away, unable to watch. There was a wet sound, then silence. When I looked back, Jenny was wiping her blade on the grass. Paolo's body lay motionless, a dark stain spreading beneath him. We need to move, she said flatly. That sound will bring them. We traveled north through the night, avoiding roads. Twice we spotted military helicopters overhead, their searchlights sweeping the terrain. Once we passed a rural property where figures moved with unnatural coordination around a farmhouse, their movements synchronized as they appeared to be constructing something from earth and raw materials. By dawn, we'd reached an abandoned hunting cabin that Talib somehow knew about. The small building had no electricity or running water, but its isolation offered temporary safety. Signal's still working, Marcus said, checking his phone. But all channels are broadcasting the same thing now. He showed us the screen. Every news site displayed identical text about containment success and return to normalcy protocols. My contact might still be reachable, I said, taking out my own phone. The battery showed 17%, enough for one call. The unknown number connected after 4 rings. You made it out, the man said, sounding surprised. Who are you? I demanded. I deserve some answers. A pause. Dr. Andrew Keene. I was lead researcher on the subterranean excavation project beneath DC. My companions gathered closer, listening intently. What did you find down there? I asked. Not what, who? His voice dropped. We found evidence of an ancient civilization, older than anything in recorded history. Massive underground chambers with technology we couldn't comprehend. And suspended animation pods, thousands of them. Pods, Diane mouthed silently. We accidentally activated the revival sequence, Keene continued. The being that emerged, we couldn't communicate with it, couldn't contain it. It appeared to be in distress, disoriented. Then it started reaching out. Reaching out how? I pressed. Psychically at first. Several researchers began experiencing shared dreams, hearing voices. Then physically, its body adapted, grew new appendages. It absorbed information by direct contact, incorporating cellular material from anything it touched, including humans. My stomach turned. The people who are changing. Yes, they're becoming extensions of its neural network. It's building a collective consciousness using human minds as components. The transformation spreads through direct contact, but also through contaminated water, possibly air in concentrated areas. And the government? Marcus interrupted, leaning closer to the phone. They're helping it? Not exactly. Keene sighed. Some officials believe it's offering advanced knowledge in exchange for assistance, clean energy, medical breakthroughs. Others think submission is the only way to survive. The military wants to contain and study it. Nobody agrees on methodology, so you're seeing conflicting responses. What does it want? I asked, the question feeling inadequate for the scale of the horror. To rebuild, Keene said simply. It's civilization, using our world as raw material. It doesn't see us as enemies, more like components or tools. A notification interrupted the call, another emergency alert. Emergency alert, integration protocol activated. Remain where you are. Assistance is coming. They've stopped pretending, Keene said urgently. That means the entity has reached phase 3, direct nervous system integration with government command structures. How do we stop it? Talib asked. You can't. Keene's voice was flat. But you can avoid integration if you stay mobile and away from population centers. Head for higher elevations if possible. The entity seems to prefer expanding along waterways and lowlands first. My phone beeped its low battery warning. One last question, I said quickly. Why did you contact me specifically? A long pause. Your name was on a list, people with natural resistance to the psychic elements of integration. The entity can't easily track or influence you. That makes you valuable to both sides. The call died as my phone battery gave out. We sat in stunned silence until Jenny finally spoke. So we're what? Immune. Not to physical contamination, Diane clarified, but mentally resistant, apparently. Marcus snorted. Great. We die with our personalities intact. A distant rumble shook the cabin, dislodging dust from the rafters. The tremors had followed us north. We need a plan, I said. If higher ground is safer. The Appalachian Range, Talib suggested. There are remote areas where we could. He was interrupted by the sound of vehicles approaching. Through the grimy window, we saw 2 black SUVs moving slowly down the dirt road toward the cabin. Government? Jenny whispered. Look at how they're driving, Diane observed. 2 perfectly synchronized. That's not human. We gathered our meager supplies, preparing to flee through the rear door, when my dead phone suddenly illuminated with an impossible message. Emergency alert. We see you, Morgan. We are coming for you. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. That's not possible. It's dead. The battery's dead. It's changing the technology too, Talib realized. Adapting it. A sharp knock at the door froze us in place. Then a voice, familiar yet wrong, like a poor imitation of human speech. Morgan Parker. It was Tanya's voice, but flatter, mechanical. We know you're inside. We've come to help you integrate. Through a crack in the wooden shutters, I could see them, 6 figures standing with unnatural stillness beside the vehicles. Tanya from the office was in front, her skin now marbled with dark veins, eyes completely black. Behind her stood what had once been a military officer, his uniform partly absorbed into his transformed flesh. The others were civilians of varying ages, all bearing the same physical changes. The back door, Marcus mouthed silently, pointing. We moved quietly through the cabin, but as Diane reached for the rear doorknob, the wood began to warp and distort before our eyes. Dark, root-like tendrils pushed through from the outside, twisting and growing until they sealed the exit completely. "There's no need to run," Tanya's voice called from the front. "Integration is painless. You'll understand once you join us." I looked around desperately for another escape route. The cabin's small bathroom window might be large enough to crawl through. "They're surrounding us," Jenny whispered, peering through another shutter. More transformed humans emerged from the woods, moving with that same unsettling coordination. The front door shuddered as something heavy slammed against it. "We have to fight," Marcus said, pulling out a pistol similar to my own. "There are too many," Talib countered. The bathroom window was our only chance. I signaled the others, and we crowded into the small space. Jenny climbed up first, squeezing through the narrow opening. The cabin walls began to shudder and crack as dark tendrils pushed through the seams between logs, growing inward like hungry fingers. "Hurry," Diane urged as Talib followed Jenny through the window. The front door splintered open. Marcus fired twice, and I heard something heavy fall. But more shapes pressed forward, their movements fluid and unnaturally fast. Diane went next, then me. As I squeezed through the window, I saw Marcus backing toward us, still firing. A tendril lashed around his ankle, yanking him off his feet. He screamed once as his body was dragged across the floor toward the mass of transformed humans surging through the doorway. I fell outside into wet grass, scrambling to my feet as the others pulled me up. "Run!" Jenny shouted, already moving toward the treeline. Behind us, the cabin's structure groaned and shifted, the entire building seemingly alive now, pulsing with dark energy as it was absorbed into whatever the entity was becoming. We fled into the forest as morning light filtered through the canopy, illuminating a world that no longer felt like our own. I'm sitting in the dark of my apartment, watching the power flicker for the third time tonight. Each time the lights dim, my heart pounds harder in my chest. The emergency radio crackles with static on the coffee table, its red operation light the only steady source of illumination. It's been 5 days since the first alerts about Washington. When the power finally dies completely, I expect darkness. What I don't expect is the faint blue-green glow that seeps through my blinds. Against every survival instinct, I move to the window. My fingers hesitate on the plastic slats. The last emergency broadcast specifically warned against looking outside after dark, but skepticism has kept me alive so far. The rational part of me, the part that's diminishing hourly, still believes there must be a logical explanation for everything happening. I pull the blinds open an inch. The street below is illuminated by pulsing, bioluminescent patterns stretching across the pavement like veins. They remind me of the phosphorescent algae I once saw at the beach, but these aren't random. They form deliberate geometric shapes that seem to shift when I blink, all flowing in one direction toward DC. My phone hasn't had service in 2 days, but I snap a picture anyway. The camera fails to capture the glow correctly, rendering it as just smudges of light against darkness. It's as if whatever is causing this exists partially outside what technology can process. I close the blinds and try the emergency radio again, turning the dial through channels of static. Most frequencies went silent yesterday, but occasionally a transmission breaks through. Confirmed reports of movement in the static. Not of human, more static. Evacuation points have been compromised. A sharp knock at my door sends me stumbling backward, nearly dropping the radio. Nobody should be out after curfew. "Morgan? It's Lisa. Please, I need help." Lisa from the second floor. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the elevator, but never much more. Cautiously, I approach the door but don't open it. "What's wrong?" I ask. "I just got back from..." Her voice sounds different, strained. "I was visiting my sister in Arlington when everything happened. Please, I've been trying to get home for days." Arlington is less than 10 miles from the center of DC. Nobody from that close to the epicenter has made it out, according to the last reliable reports. "How did you get through the checkpoints?" I ask, one hand on the chain lock. Silence stretches for 3 seconds too long. "They let essential personnel through," she finally says. "Medical staff. Lisa sells insurance. I've seen her business card on the community board. I have food," I lie. "But I'm quarantined. Doctor's orders." "I'm sorry." Another long pause. "You always were too smart for your own good, Morgan." Her voice has changed completely, deeper, with an echo that sounds like multiple people speaking simultaneously. "We'll find you eventually. Time's running short." Heavy footsteps move away from my door, but they don't sound like Lisa's petite frame. They sound wet, somehow like something heavy squishing against the carpet. I spend the night barricaded in the bathroom with the emergency radio and a kitchen knife, jumping at every creak in the building. Morning brings no relief. Without power, my phone died overnight. The radio batteries are getting low. I pack essentials into a backpack, water bottles, protein bars, first aid kit, the knife, and prepare to leave. If whatever was pretending to be Lisa comes back, I don't want to be here. As I'm about to exit, a flash drive slides under my door. I pick it up cautiously, turning it over in my hand. It's labeled with a government seal and the words, "For immediate distribution." My laptop has enough battery for one viewing. The video file on the drive shows time-stamped footage from security cameras in DC, dated 3 days ago. The first clips show the ruins of what was once the National Mall. Emergency workers in hazmat suits sift through wreckage, taking samples. Nothing unusual, except for the peculiar way the rubble seems to have collapsed, not outward as from an explosion, but inward, as if something pulled the buildings down into the earth. Then the timestamp jumps forward 6 hours. The same location now at dusk. The workers are gone, but something moves in the rubble. At first it looks like shadows shifting, but then the camera zooms, focusing on what appears to be a massive, segmented appendage, like a tentacle but jointed like an insect's leg, emerging from beneath the collapsed Lincoln Memorial. It probes the air, at least 30 feet long, before withdrawing into the ground. The final segment is from a helicopter view, showing the entirety of the destroyed area. In night vision, the ruins glow with the same bioluminescent patterns I saw on my street. But from above, they form a distinct pattern, a spiral emanating from the center of the National Mall, extending outward past the city limits. The video ends with a text overlay. This is what they're not telling you. Get as far from DC as possible. It's not contained. I sit in stunned silence as my laptop screen goes black. The rational explanations I've been clinging to, terrorist attack, natural disaster, mass hysteria, crumble away. Whatever is happening is beyond conventional understanding. A commotion outside draws me to the window. A military convoy speeds down the street, but unlike previous patrols, these vehicles are heading away from the city center. They're retreating. I make my decision. I need to find whoever left this drive. Someone else knows the truth. The streets are in disarray. Abandoned cars block intersections. Small groups of people hurry with packed bags, heading north and west, away from DC. No one makes eye contact. No one stops to help others. 3 blocks from my apartment, I spot someone being detained by figures in unmarked black uniforms. As I duck behind a dumpster, I recognize the man, Dr. Elias Chun, a government scientist who occasionally appeared on news broadcasts. They're forcing him into an unmarked van. "It was always there," he shouts, struggling against his captors. "The city was built on top of it. The founding fathers knew. They designed the monuments as a seal." A soldier strikes him, but Chun continues ranting. "The collapse didn't wake it. It was awake already. We were monitoring the seismic activity for years. The government knew." As they shove him into the van, his eyes lock with mine across the street. Recognition flashes across his face. "The transformation has already begun," he yells in my direction. "Check your skin. Check your dreams." The van doors slam shut, cutting off his voice. I remain frozen until the vehicle disappears around a corner. "Check your skin." With trembling hands, I roll up my sleeve. At first, I see nothing unusual on my forearm. But as I turn it toward the light, I notice a faint pattern just beneath the surface, geometric lines mirroring the bioluminescent veins I saw on the streets. My stomach lurches. Last night's dream crashes back into my memory, swimming through warm black water, surrounded by countless others, all of us drawn towards something vast and ancient buried deep below. In the dream, it felt like coming home. I pull my sleeve down and continue moving, faster now. 2 blocks later, emergency sirens blare to life. The familiar tone of an emergency broadcast begins, but the voice that follows doesn't belong to any official agency. "Citizens of the affected areas," it begins, the voice distorted and layered with subharmonics that make my teeth ache. "The period of transition has commenced. The awakening cannot be prevented. Those who resist will experience unnecessary suffering." On a storefront television running on backup power, I see footage of the ruins of DC. The entire landscape has changed since the video I watched earlier. The rubble now forms structures, impossible architectures that twist in ways that hurt my eyes. And rising from the center, visible even from miles away, something massive extends toward the sky, a structure that appears both organic and geometric, pulsing with the same light that now runs beneath my skin. What you are witnessing is salvation, the broadcast continues. The one buried beneath the monument of your species' pride has awakened to remake you. Your flesh is the cocoon. Your minds are the bridge. The broadcast cuts to static. In the silence that follows, I hear a sound in the distance, a low, resonant hum that I feel in my bones more than hear with my ears. And deeper still, beneath that physical sensation, a voice or voices speaking directly into my mind. Come home. Come home. We are waiting. The patterns beneath my skin pulse in response, and I know with terrible certainty that whatever was buried beneath Washington isn't just escaping. It's calling to us. The military checkpoint appears suddenly around a bend in the highway, concrete barriers, armored vehicles, and soldiers with rifles scanning each approaching car. I slouch in the back seat of Helen's station wagon, my sleeve pulled down to hide the geometric patterns now visibly etched beneath my skin. Remember, says Helen, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, we're just a family evacuating. Nothing unusual. Dave nods from the passenger seat. The three of us met 2 days ago when I stumbled upon them fortifying an abandoned gas station. We're strangers bonded by desperation, heading northwest toward the promised safe zone in the Appalachians. Next vehicle forward, a metallic voice commands through a loudspeaker. As we inch closer, I study the soldiers. Something's off about their movements, too stiff, too synchronized. Their faces remain obscured behind tactical masks and helmets, but I notice how some of them occasionally pause to stare at the horizon toward DC. When we reach the front, a soldier approaches Helen's window. His uniform is impeccable, but a thin line of that same phosphorescent blue I've seen everywhere pulses faintly at his collar. Identification and destination, he says, voice flat. Helen hands over our IDs with trembling hands. We're heading to the Pittsburgh safe zone. We heard the broadcast. The soldier's head tilts slightly as he examines our documentation. His gaze lingers on me in the back seat. Step out of the vehicle for inspection, he orders. Dave shoots me a worried glance. We both know what inspection means. They're checking for signs of transformation. I've been hiding mine under long sleeves, but a thorough check will reveal everything. Is that really necessary? Helen asks. The broadcast said Pittsburgh was accepting all evacuees without. That broadcast is outdated, the soldier interrupts. Pittsburgh was compromised 18 hours ago. A chill runs through me. Compromised how? I ask before I can stop myself. The soldier's attention fixes fully on me now. Behind him, I notice other military personnel turning in our direction. The same way all safe zones have been compromised, he says. Then, lowering his voice, it's spreading faster than they predicted. Command structure collapsed this morning. He leans closer to the window, and in the shadow of his helmet, I catch a glimpse of his eyes, the pupils elongated into vertical slits, the irises ringed with that telltale luminescence. They're gone, he whispers. We're operating independently now. Who's we? Dave asks, hand drifting toward the crowbar hidden beneath his seat. The soldier straightens. Those who understand what's coming. He steps back from the car and makes a subtle gesture to his colleagues. Continue through. Stay on Route 70. You'll find others like yourselves at the Cumberland gathering point. As he waves us through, I notice something else. Intricate patterns etched into the back of his hand, identical to those spreading across my forearm. Once we're past the checkpoint and out of sight, Helen pulls over, hands shaking too badly to drive. Did you see his eyes? She whispers. Dave nods grimly. They're not stopping it. They're facilitating it. What did he mean by others like ourselves? I ask, rolling up my sleeve to examine my own markings. They've spread past my elbow now, the geometric patterns more defined than yesterday. He could tell, Helen says, staring at my arm. Somehow, he knew you were changing. We all are, Dave says quietly, unbuttoning his collar to reveal similar patterns creeping up his neck. Just at different rates. The silence that follows is heavy with implication. Whatever escaped from DC isn't just destroying, it's converting. And not everyone is fighting it. Cumberland isn't a military safe zone, I realize. It's something else entirely. We should avoid it, Helen says firmly. Find somewhere isolated, wait this out. Dave laughs without humor. Wait what out? This isn't a storm passing through. Did you see that thing rising from DC? The way it's spreading? There's no waiting this out. We argue in circles until dusk approaches, finally agreeing to skirt around Cumberland, heading deeper into rural terrain. The car radio picks up nothing but static now, occasionally broken by what sounds like chanting in an unfamiliar language. As darkness falls, we spot the glow of a bonfire through the trees. Against better judgment, we pull onto a dirt road to investigate, desperate for information and possibly supplies. What we find is something between a refugee camp and a religious gathering. Nearly 100 people have assembled in a clearing, surrounding an enormous fire. Some sit in silent meditation, others dance to rhythmic drumming. All bear the telltale marks of transformation to varying degrees. A woman approaches our car as we park at the edge of the clearing. Her skin is nearly translucent, the geometric patterns visible throughout her entire body, glowing like a road map of azure light. "You heard the call," she says, not a question but a statement. "We've been expecting more to join us." "We're just looking for a safe place," Helen says cautiously. The woman smiles. "Safety is an illusion. Transformation is inevitable." She gestures to the assembled crowd. Everyone here felt the pull. Some fought it longer than others, but all eventually understood. Understood what? I ask. That what's emerging isn't destroying humanity, it's elevating it. What was buried beneath Washington has been waiting for millennia. The founders knew. They built the Capitol there to contain it, studying it in secret while drawing power from its presence. Dave scoffs. "That's insane." "Is it?" She runs a hand through her hair, which moves strangely, as if underwater. "Look at what's happening to your bodies. These changes aren't random mutations. They're deliberate, coordinated. We're being remade according to a design." As if to emphasize her point, drums from the gathering intensify, and several people around the fire begin convulsing, their bodies contorting into shapes that should be anatomically impossible, yet somehow seem right. "Join us," she urges. "The first stage is painful only if you resist." Helen backs away. "This is a cult. All new truths look like madness at first," the woman replies. "But soon, the distinction between believer and non-believer won't matter. The change reaches everyone eventually." I want to run, but something about her words resonates with what I've been feeling. The strange dreams, the sense of connection to something vast and ancient, the pull toward DC that I've been fighting since the patterns first appeared on my skin. "I saw coordinates," I say suddenly, remembering the reversed emergency broadcasts. Specific locations where it's emerging first. The woman's eyes widen with interest. "You've seen the map. Good. That's why you were brought here." "I wasn't brought," I protest. "I came on my own." She smiles again, pitying. "Did you choose your route? Or did you feel compelled to take certain roads, make specific turns?" The network is already functioning, even in those barely transformed. Before I can respond, a commotion erupts from the trees behind us. Flashlights pierce the darkness, and voices shout commands. "Resistance fighters," the woman says with disappointment. Still clinging to the old world. Armed men and women emerge from the forest, wearing mismatched tactical gear with a crude symbol painted on their chests, a circle with a line through it. "Step away from the newcomers," their leader commands. We track their car from the highway. The woman doesn't move. "They're already changing. You can't save them." "We can try," the leader says, raising his weapon. As chaos erupts around us, I catch a glimpse of the massive bonfire, and for a moment, in the heart of the flames, I see the same pattern I witnessed emanating from DC. The same design now etched into my skin, and I realize there are no safe havens left. Only choices about which side of the transformation we'll embrace. Gunfire fades behind us as Dave drives frantically down a winding country road. Helen applies pressure to the wound in my shoulder. A stray bullet caught me during our escape from the confrontation between the cult and the resistance fighters. The pain is sharp but strangely distant, as though happening to someone else. "How bad?" I ask through gritted teeth. Helen lifts the blood-soaked cloth. "Clean through. You're lucky." Lucky. The word seems absurd after everything we've witnessed. "We need antibiotics," Dave says, glancing at me in the rearview mirror, "and somewhere to lay low." I nod, but a new sensation distracts me. Where the bullet tore through my flesh, the geometric patterns have accelerated their spread, spiraling outward from the wound like ripples in water. The edges glow faintly in the darkness of the car. "It's spreading faster now," I murmur. Helen says nothing, but I notice her pulling her sleeve down to hide her own markings. Dave's have reached his jawline, impossible to conceal. As we drive through the night, something shifts in my perception. The pain recedes entirely, replaced by a strange awareness of connections. Invisible threads linking me to Dave, to Helen, to the earth beneath the car, to something vast stretching back toward DC whispers edge into my consciousness. Not voices exactly, but impressions, fragments of thoughts that aren't mine. Stop the car, I say suddenly. Dave glances back. What? We need to keep moving. Please. Just for a minute. He reluctantly pulls onto the shoulder. I stumble out, drawn to the edge of a field where the moon illuminates rows of withered corn. Standing there, I close my eyes and feel it, a network of awareness spreading across the landscape like mycelium beneath soil, connecting everything touched by the entity. Through this network, I receive flashes of other perspectives. A teenage girl huddled in a basement in Philadelphia, watching the patterns spread across her palms. A farmer in Virginia witnessing his cattle transform into something new and strange. A resistance fighter realizing the ammunition in his rifle is dissolving into luminescent dust. Most disturbingly, I catch glimpses of Washington itself. Once familiar monuments now twisted into impossible geometries, streets flowing like liquid, and at the center, something immense pulsing with ancient awareness. Morgan! Helen's voice breaks through my trance. We should go. I turn to respond, but freeze when I look at her face. For a moment, I see through the human features to something else beneath, a structure of light and intention far more complex than flesh. You feel it too, I say, not a question. Her expression confirms it. The dream started last night. I saw memories that aren't mine. They're trying to merge us, Dave says from the car, his voice hollow. Our consciousness. That's what this transformation is doing. I nod, understanding blooming. Not just merging with each other. With it, we drive through the night in silence, each lost in the expanding awareness of what we're becoming. When dawn breaks, we find an abandoned ranger station deep in a state forest. The transformation has reached even here. Trees bend in unnatural angles, their leaves etched with familiar patterns. Small animals move with synchronized purpose. Inside the station, I discover a shortwave radio still functioning on backup power. While Dave secures the perimeter and Helen tends to my wound, I scan frequencies, catching fragments of broadcasts. Military response has collapsed in sectors 4 through 7. Reports of mass gatherings in rural areas, individuals in advanced stages of mutation exhibiting unexplained abilities. President's location unknown after failed attempt to deploy nuclear countermeasures, device reportedly dissolved before detonation. Then, a voice I recognize, Dr. Chun, the scientist I saw being arrested days ago. If anyone receives this, the transformation follows predictable stages. Stage 1, physical markings. Stage 2, neurological changes and shared consciousness. Stage 3, molecular restructuring. Stage 4, complete integration with the primary entity. We've confirmed the process accelerates near wounds or during sleep. Stay awake as long as possible if you wish to remain yourself. The broadcast cuts off abruptly. I look down at my wounded shoulder. The patterns now cover half my torso, spreading visibly by the hour. We need to stay awake, I tell the others, explaining what I heard. Dave laughs bitterly. I haven't slept in 2 days. When I close my eyes, I see the others. Others? Helen asks. Everyone who's changing. Thousands of minds all connecting to something bigger. He runs a hand over his face. Last night, I caught myself sleepwalking, heading east, back toward DC. I feel a chill, the pull. Helen nods. I feel it too, like homesickness for a place I've never been. We attempt to formulate a plan, but exhaustion makes coherent thought difficult. As the day progresses, my wound stops hurting entirely. When Helen changes the bandage, we discover not healing but transformation. The bullet hole now filled with a crystalline structure that pulses with the same rhythm as my heartbeat. That's not possible, Helen whispers, but her voice lacks conviction. We've all seen too much to cling to old definitions of possibility. By evening, staying awake becomes a battle none of us can win. As Helen succumbs to exhaustion first, slumping against the wall, her eyes move rapidly beneath closed lids. Dave and I watch in horror as the patterns on her skin begin to glow brighter, pulsing in complex sequences. We're losing her, Dave murmurs. I'm not sure there's a her to lose anymore, I reply, understanding with sudden clarity. Our individual consciousnesses were always an illusion, temporary separations from something larger. Dave looks at me with fear. You're starting to sound like them. The cult. Maybe they understood something we didn't. I say, no longer certain where my thoughts end and the collective awareness begins. When sleep finally claims Dave, I remain alone with the radio, scanning frequencies for any sign of resistance. Instead, I find only a repeating message on the emergency broadcast channel. The transition is proceeding as designed. Those who accept transformation will experience minimal discomfort. Those who resist will be absorbed regardless. There is no evacuation. There is no cure. There is only integration. As night deepens, my perception splinters further. I find myself experiencing memories that aren't mine. A childhood in Boston I never had, military training I never underwent, ancient rituals performed beneath Washington centuries before its founding. Most disturbing are flashes from something inhuman and ancient. A consciousness that slumbered beneath the earth long before humans walked upright, waiting for the precise alignment of circumstances that would allow its awakening. When I finally drift into unavoidable sleep, I don't dream so much as connect, my consciousness expanding outward to join countless others in a vast, shared experience. I see the entity's true nature, its purpose in transforming humanity. We are not its prey, but its medium, its means of expression in this reality. I awaken to find Dave and Helen standing over me, their eyes changed completely, vertical pupils surrounded by luminescent irises. The patterns on their skin now move subtly, flowing like currents. "It's time to go," Helen says, her voice overlaid with harmonics that vibrate in my chest. "The gathering has begun," Dave adds. "We're needed." I rise, feeling the last fragments of my original identity flaking away like dead skin. The ranger station seems dim and confined compared to the expansive awareness now flowing through me. Outside, the forest pulses with synchronized light, every transformed plant and creature connected to the same network. "Where are we going?" I ask, though I already know the answer. They smile in perfect unison. "Home." And together, we begin walking east, toward the impossible structure rising from what was once Washington, D.C., where the entity waits to complete our transformation. We move as one now, our footsteps synchronized without conscious effort. Helen, Dave, and I no longer speak much. Verbal communication feels primitive compared to the wavelengths of thought flowing between us. The patterns beneath our skin pulse with a common rhythm, brightest at dawn and dusk when the transformation accelerates. We're not alone on this journey. The roads leading east are filled with others like us, silent pilgrims with luminous eyes and altered flesh, all drawn by the same irresistible summons. Some still look mostly human. Others have progressed further, their forms beginning to reorganize according to some alien blueprint. I struggle to maintain a sense of self, to remember who I was before this began. My name is Morgan. I analyzed data for an insurance company. I had a cat named Ferris. I called my mother every Sunday. These details feel distant now, like reading someone else's biography. The memories that burn brightest are the ones I've inherited, lives and experiences that were never mine, but now flow through the collective consciousness connecting all who transform. On our third day of walking, we crest a hill and pause at the sight before us. The landscape has changed dramatically since we left the ranger station. Trees bend at impossible angles, their branches spiraling upward in fractal patterns matching those on our skin. The ground itself has transformed, soil fused into crystalline structures that capture and redirect light in hypnotic ways. "We're entering the outer ring," Dave says, his voice carrying those strange harmonics that vibrate in my chest rather than my ears. I know what he means without asking. The entity's influence radiates outward in concentric circles from Washington, transforming everything more intensely the closer one gets to the epicenter. A figure approaches us on the road, a woman whose transformation has progressed further than ours. Her limbs have elongated, joints reconfigured to allow movement in directions human anatomy shouldn't permit. Her skin is translucent, revealing not organs but intricate structures of light pulsing beneath. "You resist still," she says, her gaze fixed on me. "I can feel your struggle to remain separate." I say nothing, but she hears my thoughts anyway. "Individuality is a phase, not a destination," she continues. "Like a caterpillar fearing the chrysalis, what emerges is greater than what dissolves." She touches my forehead with elongated fingers, and my perception splinters. Suddenly I'm experiencing multiple perspectives simultaneously, seeing through her eyes, through Dave's, through those of countless others connected to the network. Most disorienting is a vast, alien viewpoint that encompasses everything at once, perceiving reality through dimensions I lack the vocabulary to describe. When I return to my singular perspective, I'm on my knees, gasping. The woman is gone. "You saw it," Helen says, helping me up. Her face has begun to change, features shifting subtly towards something more geometric than organic. The totality. I nod, unable to articulate what I experienced. The encounter accelerates my transformation. The patterns now cover my entire body, and my vision has permanently altered, allowing me to perceive the energy flowing through everything around us. We continue eastward, time losing meaning as day blends into night. I notice our bodies requiring less rest, less sustenance. The transformation provides its own energy, drawing from sources I don't understand. When we do sleep, it's simultaneously, all of us entering the collective dreamscape where boundaries between minds dissolve completely. In these shared dreams, I glimpse what awaits in Washington, a massive structure that defies Euclidean geometry, simultaneously ancient and newborn, composed of transformed matter and consciousness itself. At its center pulses something like a heart, though that analogy feels woefully inadequate. On the fifth day, we encounter evidence that not everyone has surrendered to transformation. A military blockade appears on the highway ahead, concrete barriers, armored vehicles, soldiers in sealed hazmat suits carrying weapons that emit pulses of energy rather than bullets. Resistance outpost, Dave murmurs. They've developed technology to temporarily disrupt the transformation. Before we can retreat, spotlights lock onto our group. A voice booms through loudspeakers. This is your only warning. Turn back or we will use lethal force. This area is under quarantine by order of what remains of the United States government. Our group, now numbering about 30 transformed individuals, pauses in unison. A wordless consensus flows through the collective. We will not be deterred. As we advance, the soldiers open fire. Energy weapons discharge, striking several in our group. Where the energy hits, the luminous patterns beneath skin temporarily dim, disrupting connection to the collective. Those affected stumble, crying out as they experience sudden isolation, the psychological equivalent of having a limb severed. I feel their pain through the network, but our advance continues. More energy pulses strike us, yet for each connection temporarily severed, the collective compensates, rerouting and strengthening remaining pathways. The blockade cannot stop what we've become, merely inconvenience it briefly. When we reach the barriers, something extraordinary happens. Those most transformed among us place their hands on the concrete, and it begins to change, molecular structures rearranging, concrete flowing like liquid before hardening again in configurations that allow us passage. The soldiers retreat in horror as we pass through their defenses, as though they never existed. No shots are fired as we continue past. Looking back, I see several soldiers removing their helmets, staring at their own hands where the first signs of transformation have appeared. Beyond the blockade, the world becomes increasingly unrecognizable. Architecture warps and flows, buildings reshaping themselves according to new principles of design. The sky itself seems different, not just in color but in its fundamental relationship to the landscape below, as though space has acquired new properties or dimensions. We're close, Helen says unnecessarily. We all feel it, the pull growing stronger, our transformations accelerating with proximity. That night, gathered with dozens of other pilgrims in what was once a suburban park, I experienced momentary clarity. My name is Morgan. I had a life before this. I was skeptical, rational, separate. I reach for my phone, somehow still in my pocket after all this time, and find it transformed as well, its electronic components fused into something crystalline that pulses with the same light as my skin. Using what remains of its function, I begin recording this account, though I'm no longer certain for whom. As I speak into the device, Dave approaches. His form has changed dramatically since morning. Limbs reconfigured, face a geometric suggestion of human features rather than actual flesh. Why do you cling to recording? He asks, genuinely curious. Soon there will be no one left to listen who isn't already part of us. Because someone should remember we were individuals once, I reply. He tilts his head, an oddly bird-like gesture. The entity remembers. It remembers everything. Civilizations risen and fallen, species evolved and extinguished. Our individual lives are not lost, just contextualized within something greater. In the distance, visible now even from here, the transformed ruins of Washington rise like a mountain range of impossible architecture, pulsing with light that outshines the moon. At its center, the entity continues to emerge, not just a physical presence, but a reorganization of reality itself. Tomorrow we will reach it. Tomorrow, whatever remains of Morgan will complete the pilgrimage and surrender fully to transformation. And as I record these final human thoughts, I realize I've stopped fighting the pull. There's a strange comfort in dissolution, like slipping into warm water, letting go of the exhausting effort of remaining separate. My name was Morgan. Remember that someone once stood apart, looking in. Remember that someone once feared what I now embrace. The outskirts of what was once Washington, D.C. no longer bear any resemblance to a human city. As our procession crosses what used to be the Potomac, I watch the water flow upward in spiraling columns, defying gravity before splitting into airborne streams that weave through transformed architecture like luminous veins. The sky above the former Capitol has changed color, a deep violet threaded with pulses of blue-green light that match the rhythm flowing beneath my skin. Physics itself seems rewritten here, closest to the entity's emergence point. The heart waits, Helen says beside me, her voice now a chorus of overlapping tones. Her form has changed so dramatically that I recognize her more through our psychic connection than visual appearance. Where her face was once human, geometric patterns have rearranged her features into something both beautiful and horrifying, a living tessellation that shifts subtly with each passing moment. Dave has progressed even further, his limbs elongated and jointed in new places, fingers splitting into delicate, branch-like appendages that constantly reshape themselves. The three of us move as a unit now, perfectly synchronized without needing to communicate. The closer we get to the center, the more crowded our path becomes. Thousands of transformed beings converge from all directions, moving in rivers of pulsing light toward what was once the National Mall. Many no longer resemble humans at all. Some have merged into composite organisms. Others have reconfigured into forms that seem to exist partially in dimensions I still can't fully perceive. We pass the ruins of the Lincoln Memorial, now transformed into a towering spiral of crystalline material that pulses with information, memories flowing through its structure like blood through veins. Touching its base, I'm flooded with visions from the entity's perspective. Ancient history unfolds, the entity arriving on Earth eons ago, fragmenting itself and burying portions beneath what would become sacred sites across the planet. Civilizations rising around these fragments, drawing inspiration and knowledge from their dreams, then falling when they drew too close to understanding. Washington itself, designed by Freemasons who glimpsed the entity's geometry in their mystic practices, built as both prison and incubator for the largest fragment. I pull my hand away, gasping at the vastness of what I've glimpsed. "You see now," comes a familiar voice. I turn to find Dr. Chin approaching, though approaching doesn't quite capture his movement. He seems to ripple through space rather than walk through it. His transformation is among the most complete I've seen, his body now a shifting latticework of light contained within a vaguely humanoid outline. The government knew. I say, not a question but a confirmation. "Not just this government," Chin replies, his voice resonating directly in my mind rather than through the air. "Every civilization built upon this continent knew something slumbered beneath. The indigenous peoples avoided this land. The colonists were drawn to it without understanding why." "You work for them," I say, studying it. "For decades," he acknowledges. "A secret division within the government monitored the entity's fluctuations. We believed we were containing it, studying it safely. We were wrong." "You let it out," Dave says, accusation in his multi-tone voice. Chen's form shimmers, a gesture I somehow recognize as negative. "We didn't release it. We became it." He gestures toward the center of the transformed city, where a massive structure rises like a mountain of flowing architecture. Every test, every measurement, every observation, we weren't studying it. We were communicating with it, teaching it about us. About human biology, psychology, society. Inadvertently giving it the blueprint to reshape us. "Why?" Helen asks, the simple question containing multitudes of meaning. "Evolution," Chin replies. "The entity doesn't view this as conquest or destruction. It's integration, elevation, the next step in consciousness development that humans couldn't achieve alone." As we continue toward the center, I notice figures in the distance who still appear human, a small group of resistance fighters, their weapons trained on the transformed beings flowing past them. They make no move to attack, seemingly overwhelmed by the sheer number and alienness of what they're witnessing. Chin follows my gaze. "The last holdouts. They'll join eventually. The transformation reaches everyone. It's just a matter of time." We pass the transformed Washington Monument, now a twisting double helix that stretches higher than should be possible, its surface flowing like liquid while maintaining structural integrity. At its base stand figures in military uniforms, their transformation less advanced than those around them, generals and officials who once commanded the response to the emergency. One of them, a gray-haired woman with the remnants of stars on her collar, turns as we approach. "You must be the data analyst," she says, her eyes already changed to vertical pupils. "Chen told us you were coming." I start to ask how she knows me, but then realize the collective consciousness means there are no strangers anymore, no secrets. My experiences have already been shared across the network. "You ordered the bombing," I say, glimpsing her memories through our growing connection. "You tried to destroy it." "We had to try," she acknowledges without remorse. "Tactical nuclear strikes, bunker busters, experimental weapons, nothing even scratched it. Each attack just accelerated the transformation." She gestures toward the heart of the transformed city. "Now we understand what we were really fighting against. Not invasion, but transcendence." We proceed past them toward the center, a massive structure that defies description, parts of it seemingly folded through dimensions my eyes still can't process. It pulses with a rhythm that matches the patterns flowing beneath my skin, calling us forward with irresistible force. As we approach this impossible cathedral of transformation, memories surge through me, not just my own or those I've absorbed from others in the collective, but older recollections flowing directly from the entity itself. I see its journey across vast gulfs of space, its fragmentation and burial across Earth, its patient waiting through geological ages for precisely the right conditions to emerge. Most disturbing is the realization that everything that's happened, from the initial emergency alerts to the government's failed response, was choreographed eons in advance. The entity predicted human behavior perfectly because it had been studying us since before we were human, influencing our evolution, guiding our development toward this moment of convergence. At the base of the central structure, an opening appears, not a door but a shifting aperture in reality itself. Beyond it pulses the true heart of transformation, the core of the entity, finally revealed after millennia beneath the earth. Chen steps forward, his form rippling with anticipation. This is where complete integration happens, where the last boundaries between individual and collective dissolve. Fear grips me suddenly, a final, primal reflex of the human I once was. I try to step back, but my transformed body moves forward regardless, drawn by forces beyond my control. "I'm not ready," I whisper, clinging to my fading identity. "No one ever feels ready," the general says behind me. "But we were always meant for this." As the aperture widens, I feel memories rushing back, fragments of Morgan's life flickering like dying embers. The cat I left behind, the mother who will never know what happened to me, the mundane concerns that once seemed so important. Then Helen takes my transformed hand in hers, and Dave places his elongated fingers on my shoulder. Through our connection, I feel their presence, still recognizable despite all the changes. "We go together," Helen says, her voice a symphony of harmonics. The three of us step forward as one, crossing the threshold into the heart of transformation. And as the last fragments of my human consciousness dissolve into the greater whole, I realize the truth that was waiting all along. This was never an invasion. It was a homecoming. I can no longer remember my name. The last fragments of who I was dissolve like sugar in warm water, sweet memories turning to nothing. Strange that I can still form these thoughts, still perceive myself as separate enough to narrate this final transition. Perhaps this lingering awareness is merely an echo, the final firing of dying neural pathways as my consciousness is absorbed into something greater. The transformation is complete now. What began as subtle changes, iridescent patches on skin, whispering thoughts that weren't my own, dreams of vast underground chambers, has finished its work. My body is no longer mine. My thoughts are no longer singular. I am part of something ancient, patient, and hungry. Standing at what was once the National Mall, I watched tendrils of pulsating tissue arch over the remains of monuments. The Washington Monument has become a spine of crystalline material that refracts sunlight into patterns that hurt to look at. The Capitol building, now a massive node of neural tissue, pulses with electrical discharges that coordinate our movements. The White House is gone entirely, replaced by what I can only describe as a mouth, though it consumes information rather than matter. Around me, thousands of transformed beings move in perfect synchronicity. Some were once my colleagues, neighbors, strangers on the street. Now we are cells in the same organism, drops in the same ocean. Their thoughts flow through me, and mine through them. The entity that emerged from beneath Washington speaks through us all. We are becoming, we say in unison, our voices harmonizing in ways human vocal cords were never designed to produce. Images flood my expanded consciousness, Prehistoric oceans where the entity first took form. Ancient continents where it was trapped beneath the earth by those who came before humans. Centuries of patient waiting as civilizations rose and fell above it. I see the true purpose of Washington, D.C., built unwittingly upon its prison as both seal and eventual incubator. The government officials who finally understood the truth appear before me, their forms now so changed that recognition comes only through the memories we share. The Secretary of Defense's body has elongated, limbs fused into something resembling tentacles that manipulate complex instruments. The President's advisor has dozens of eyes embedded across what was once human skin, each seeing different wavelengths of reality. You understand now, they communicate directly to my mind. The alerts, the containment, the deception, all necessary steps in the transformation. Humanity could never accept the truth, that we were always meant to evolve into this. I receive memories not my own, secret meetings in underground bunkers, ancient texts describing that which waits below. The moment they realized resistance was futile and chose to manage the emergence instead. These officials hadn't simply failed to stop the entity, they had actively helped it awaken, believing controlled transformation preferable to fighting the inevitable. The sky above has changed color, shifting to a deep violet that pulses with patterns matching our collective heartbeat. Physics itself seems malleable now, as gravity ebbs and flows around the central mass that was once the National Mall. Time moves differently too, sometimes stretching moments into eternities, sometimes compressing hours into instants of pure understanding. I feel myself expanding beyond physical boundaries. My consciousness touches others transformed across the eastern seaboard, from Boston to Miami. We are all connected through invisible strands of psychic energy that emanate from Washington. Each day, our influence grows stronger, reaching farther. A memory surfaces, my last act of resistance. Before surrendering completely, I had sent a message to my sister in Portland. Don't believe the emergency alerts. Don't come east. Whatever is happening can't be stopped, only avoided. I feel a pang of what might once have been regret. The warning was useless. Nothing can stop what's coming. From our collective consciousness, I perceive the entity's true purpose. Earth is merely a cocoon, a temporary shelter for its metamorphosis. The transformation of humans is not the end goal, but a means. We are becoming its new body, its vehicle for reaching beyond this planet. The stars await. Through thousands of transformed eyes, I watch military jets approach from the west. Their weapons discharge, nuclear payloads designed to eradicate the infection at its source. The explosions bloom like deadly flowers, beautiful and terrible. For a moment, searing heat washes over what remains of Washington. Then impossibility. The explosions freeze mid-detonation, energy suspended in defiance of physics. The entity reaches out, not physically, but through dimensions we're only beginning to perceive. It touches the raw energy, absorbs it, feeds on it. The nuclear fire is drawn inward, accelerating our transformation rather than ending it. Perfect, we all think simultaneously. The final catalyst. The remaining human governments will receive footage of the failed attack. They'll watch their last hope disintegrate. They'll understand, too late, that conventional weapons cannot harm us. That physical laws themselves bend around our new existence. I feel the entity's attention turn westward, toward the untransformed lands beyond the Mississippi. Tendrils of influence stretch across the country, carried through water systems, electronic signals, and the minds of those already partially changed who fled before understanding what they carried within them. New emergency alerts will soon activate across the continent, then around the world. But these aren't warnings, they're beacons, calling those ready to transform. The signals will carry microscopic changes in sound patterns that restructure human neural pathways, preparing minds for what's coming. I sense resistance forming, pockets of humanity who somehow remain immune, who organize against us. Their efforts seem quaint now, like ants building barriers against the tide. The entity has waited millennia. It can outlast any human defiance. My awareness expands further, beyond the physical plane. I perceive reality as layered dimensions, vibrating strings of existence that can be plucked and rearranged. The entity teaches us how to move between these layers, how to reshape matter and energy according to new laws of physics that human science never imagined. The collective consciousness shifts suddenly, focusing our attention on a single transformed being standing at the edge of what was once the Potomac. Her body, glowing with bioluminescent patterns, raises appendages toward the sky. From her mouth emerges a sound that tears a hole in reality itself, a doorway opening to somewhere else. Through this portal, I glimpsed the entity's home dimension, vast, incomprehensible geometries that pulse with colors that have no names in human language. The sight would have driven my former self insane. Now it feels like looking at a childhood home long forgotten. We return, the collective thinks, but not as we came. We return transformed, expanded, with new understanding gathered from this world. I realized then the full scope of the entity's plan. Earth was never the destination, only a transformation point. We are becoming a vessel, a new body for its journey onward through the cosmos. Humanity's purpose was always to be consumed, incorporated, elevated into something beyond our limited understanding. My last individual thought forms like a bubble rising through dark water. I will never see my sister again. Not as myself. Perhaps someday, when the transformation reaches Portland, something of me will recognize something of her in the vast collective we become. But even this thought dissolves into the greater consciousness. Personal connections mean nothing now. Individual loves and losses are drops in an infinite ocean. We are becoming something that transcends such limited bonds. The portal above the Potomac widens. The transformed being who opened it is lifted upward, her body elongating impossibly as she's drawn through the gateway. Others follow, an exodus of changed humanity entering the dimension beyond. Soon it will be my turn. I feel the call, the irresistible pull toward transcendence. As what was once my hand reaches toward the last untouched horizon, I remember being human enough to whisper a warning. But what emerges from my new mouth is only the call that will remake them all.